Welcome to The Business Behind Your Business, the podcast where we delve into the financial strategies and insights that drive success for small and medium-sized business owners. I'm your host, Paul Sweeney, and in each episode we bring you expert guests who share practical advice, real-world experiences, and actionable tips to empower you on your business journey. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out, get ready to uncover the secrets to success and gain valuable insights into the business behind your business. Welcome back to the Business Behind Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Paul Sweeney, and we're looking at an issue today that a lot of small businesses often overlook during the excitement of starting their business, of that excitement of getting started. They're looking for their first customer, making that first sale, but there's a lot of issues that they often overlook. And unfortunately, when those issues arise, it can have some catastrophic effects because usually there's a legal issue involved and potentially loss of income, loss of reputation, loss of brand, or maybe even some damages involved for breaching somebody else's rights and property there. So it's important to understand what your obligations are. And look, as always, we like to get the experts involved to help us understand the issues correctly and understand what we need to be doing. So today we're joined by Matthew Fornaro. He's been a business law attorney serving in South Florida, Coral Springs, Parkland, since 2003. He's founded his own law firm in, 2013. It's previously been an attorney at two of the prestigious AM Law 200 firms, focusing on civil litigation. But what's come through, and I've had the pleasure of having a chat with Matthew before we've hit record, quite keen to make sure that small and medium businesses succeed, has a passion for helping them not just understand their contracts, but actually use that to grow their business. Because it can be a complex area, and making sure that you do everything correctly at the first stage is very important. What I also like to see is Matthew's involved in mentoring other attorneys, graduates. He's an instructor of the Kaufman Foundation's Fast Track New Venture program, also a graduate and instructor for Florida State University College of Business. It's great to have Matthew involved. And so we're going to ask Matthew, welcome to the microphone, and why are you so passionate about helping small, medium businesses?
Well, thanks for having me, Paul. It goes back to two different things that make me passionate about helping small and medium-sized businesses. One is I used to work for, two really big law firms, and I used to work for really big, my clients are really big companies and banks. And I had a certain level of practice that I brought to that. And I always thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could use this level of practice or knowledge and bring it to smaller and medium-sized businesses? So that was one of the things. The other thing was when I was growing up, my dad had his own small business, and I would always see the issues that he dealt with as a small business owner regarding like different, legalities, accounting issues and whatever. And I always thought that he personally was underserved by the professionals around him. And I thought it would be great someday if, he, now that he's retired, it's kind of after the fact, but it would be great if people in his position would be able to have the level of representation that you would get with representation that you get at higher levels of business or larger business entities or larger organizations. So it's kind of that combination that made me 10 years ago decide to leave my big law firm job and start my own law firm and focus on helping small and medium-sized businesses. And that's kind of what I've been doing for the last 10 years.
Great. Fantastic. And I think a lot of people who have started their journey as a small or medium-sized business have really found that once they've got started, they've missed a lot of the steps. That some of them have come from those large corporate backgrounds like what you have, where you have your HR department, your marketing department, your legal department, your IT department, all there. But as a small, medium business owner, you don't have a lot of those resources. And often when you go to get advice, you're not getting the same quality of advice. So what you're providing is that top end advice, top end framework for the small, medium business owner.
I mean, that's why I focus on it, because like you said, it's, I think, an underserved market. It's not a niche market. It's a huge market. because the majority of businesses, in the US and Australia are small and medium-sized businesses. They're not large businesses. So it's definitely an underserved market. And I'm glad I'm where I am.
Mm. And so, like a lot of small business owners, I mentioned at the beginning that they get excited about the whole journey of starting their business, but there's a lot of pitfalls that they can sort of get them unstuck along that journey. But you've developed a great tool. I think that's a great starting point. Is you've got a resource that you've developed, which is 10 key contracts that every business needs. Obviously you've identified these contracts as an essential for business owners. Is that because you've observed that they were the things that business owners were not getting right?
Yes, because as you pointed out, the average business owner or person who's starting a business is so eager and so excited about starting the business that either they don't know what the proper steps are that they need to do to start the business, or they've not gotten the correct advice, or they've gotten incorrect advice, or they just want to get out there and start doing their business. So in that haste, they miss a lot of the steps that they need to do in order to properly start their business. And then they literally start off on the wrong foot. And then it's a problem going down the road that later on will eventually catch up to them, that they then have to solve and resolve. So that's why I like to, I help businesses, both startup businesses and existing businesses. Startup businesses, obviously, we try to get all the documents in place that need to be in place for them to start up properly. For existing businesses, if they don't have the documents, we try to get them in place and try to retroactively make sure that they, use the documents and do what they're supposed to do with the documents. But, starting out with the business, the main document that you need to have is a written business plan. And a lot of people just skip over that and don't do it. And it's essential because it's the framework for how your entire business operates. It says what you do, who's in your business, how you get money, how you resolve issues, how you bring people into the business, how you have people leave the business, how you sell the business, how you add to the business. So that's one of the main documents that I advocate having. And that's a document that a lot of people just skip over. The next set of documents that people skip over is their governing documents. They just go, for instance, here in Florida, you can go online to our Secretary of State, and within 5 to 10 minutes, you can have a business set up just by clicking on some buttons, putting in some very rudimentary information. And they think that that's all they need to do to start the business. But in reality, you need to have articles of incorporation or operating agreements or partnership agreements, which people skip over and don't do because they don't know they have to do it. And, it doesn't say so when you go to register on the internet. And it's something that comes back later on. I don't want to say haunt you, but it's one of the things that you should have focused on and you should have done at the beginning. So that's what I try to advocate and try to make known for my clients, is to get all those documents in place along with regular, contracts like you would think of, like employment contracts, landlord-tenant leases, vendor contracts, different service contracts, things like that. So it's all a panacea of different contracts that all need to come together for no matter what industry you're in or what size business you have, they're all necessary.
Yeah, a lot of contracts. And I think you mentioned a key point there that often as a business owner or somebody new to business, you don't know you need those contracts. You don't know that you need those documents in place. So if you don't know you need them, you're not going to go looking for them. And I think a lot of government websites and the situation you've described just then is very similar to what I'm seeing in Australia, and I'm hearing from other countries as well, is that the government websites are not there designed to help you start your business correctly. They help you comply with the minimum requirements that you have to comply with to set up. They're not helping you with understanding what your tax obligations are going to be or what your contractual obligations are going to be. So I think we are often come across business owners who have gone online, done the cheap and nasty version of setting up a new structure, but they've missed so much.
No, that's true. I mean, you just identified it. It's when you go online to whatever, government oversees your corporations or your LLCs or whatever, you're literally doing the bare minimum just to get into business. And the bare minimum doesn't cut it because, if you need to go to a bank and take out a loan, or if you need to have a corporate meeting, or you get sued, or you need to sue someone, if you don't have those documents in place, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's what I often see is that when something goes wrong, or as you mentioned, when they go to the bank and they're usually trying to get some finance and they don't have the documentation in place, that's when the problems start to, I guess, develop and add some more complexity to what they're doing.
Correct. And that's the easiest and best example, is like trying to get a loan from a bank or trying to open up a bank account, because that's something where it's pretty low stress, low impact. You can fix it, situations like that. It's adversary situations, like if you get sued or you get audit, or you get a tax audit or something, where it's a lot more, hostile of an environment, is where real problems start. Because if you don't have those documents in place, you're going to get hammered, regardless of whether it's the government, whether it's an opposing party in a lawsuit, or some kind of regulatory body.
Yeah, yeah. It was interesting when you were listing the documents, and I was a little bit surprised because I wasn't expecting a legal expert to mention the business plan as the first document they spoke of, because it's often one of the documents that we take to clients they need to have. So a business plan, but also a shareholders agreement if they've got another party in the business with them. But it's interesting that you've picked that business plan as the first, as one of the most important documents. Can you sort of share like some of the reasons why it's so important to have that, and how everything else in the business sort of ties back to what's in that plan?
Sure, because the business plan, or the written business plan, is the embodiment of your business. So you can have all these great ideas, you can have all these great goals, you can have all these great aspirations, but unless you have some kind of way to tangibly make it happen, and make it happen in a logical and, a real process, you're going to have issues and you're going to have problems. You're never going to have the business success that you should have, or at least have the opportunity to have the business success that you should have. And that's why the written business plan is so important, because it makes you have to think ahead of time about where you are, where you start, and where you want to be in the future, and how you're going to get there. And it makes you think about, well, I need to work with, a business law attorney, or I need to work with an accountant, or I need to work with a banker. And then I'm going to have issues where I'm going to have employees. What am I going to do with those employees? Or I'm going to have to rent commercial space. What do I have to do for commercial space? I need a bank account. Where am I going to go bank at? What kind of business organization do I want? Do I want a corporation? Do I want an LLC? Do I want a partnership? And so it's basically makes you critically think before you actually start taking action, and it makes you plan ahead. And the planning is, a big part of going into business, is making sure that you adequately plan. And that's why the written business plan is so important, because it's the manifestation of your business. And if you don't do it, you're kind of just making it up as you go. And that's never a good way to do things, because, instead of having like, I'm definitely going to do this, I'm going to start at A and go to Z. If you're just kind of meandering around, you're going to run into issues, no matter how much you think you're doing good, or how, good intention you are. You're going to have problems unless you've planned ahead, which is why it's such an important document.
And that in that planning ahead, you're right. You mentioned identifying, okay, I'm going to need contracts here for employment or for renting a premises, and I guess working through that business plan with your legal representative, with your lawyer, you'll help to identify what contracts must be in place, or what are the rules, if particularly, and I'm guessing going across different borders, if you're transacting in different borders or different localities, there may be different rules applying to your business operation as you move from one place to another.
Correct. And it's not just international, it's national. Like here in the States, corporate, and I'll use corporations as an example, or I'll use LLC as an example. There's no such thing as a national corporation or a national LLC. It's by our individual states and our individual territories. So there's over 50 different jurisdictions. So there's 50 different kinds of corporations, or, corporate governing documents or laws that govern corporations, where I'm in Florida. What works in Florida doesn't work in New York, doesn't work in California. So that's why you want to make sure that you're good for Florida. And if you do cross state business, you have to make sure that you're in compliance with the rules in the other state. And then if you're going to do international business, you want to make sure that you're, in compliance with the international rules as well, because an issue is definitely going to arise, and you're going to make sure that, you've paid the correct taxes, you've gotten the correct paperwork in place, you've gotten the correct permission, and everything's correct in order to, not just do international business, but just do national business.
I think, it's very easy to think, well, hang on, my business is only located in my suburb. I don't need to be aware of it, but we're all using the internet. We're all using software tools from overseas. We are going to have customers in different states, and it's not just the United States. We have some different rules for different situations, particularly around employment. Different states of Australia have different employment rules, different protections. We have, I think we've got something like 6 to 8 different definitions of what a small business is for different sets of rules. So you need to be aware of those. And small business owner, if you're just starting out, you're not going to be aware of that unless that's the area that you're an expert in. But most small business owners don't go into business being an expert in that. They're an expert in the business they're going to run. So we've got a lot of issues with understanding, if I transact here, or if my customer is in another state, what are the implications? And I think, it's so easy to get that wrong. What kind of penalties or what kind of issues would we face if we did get some of those things wrong?
Sure. I mean, I'll just use the U.S. as an example. If I'm in Florida, and if I sell something over the internet or whatever to like New York, okay, well, Florida, we have 7% sales tax. We don't have corporate tax necessarily. We don't have like different excise taxes or anything like that. New York has all those taxes. So if I'm selling something in New York, I need to know what New York sales tax is, if it's technically sold in New York, and all the different things. I mean, like New York City has its own tax, the state has its own tax. So those are all things there. If you run afoul of, the law where you're dealing with, you're going to have mostly tax consequences, which then can turn into legal consequences regarding, operating in different states. So that's why it's one of the things where, if you operate through a platform like Amazon or eBay or something like that, they kind of help you manage that because they've already figured that out and take care of it on their end. But if you're doing direct, like business to business transactions or business to individual transactions, those are things that you need to know. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems where you didn't take out the tax and give it to the correct entity. So they're going to come looking for their money, and they don't care if you're in another state. They're going to hold you accountable.
So being ignorant of the rules is really no protection. How do the contracts or the plans that you would put in place actually provide some protection to a business owner?
Sure, because they make sure that you're covered in your home jurisdiction, which is the main priority, and that when you venture out into different jurisdictions, that where possible, you want to make sure that your home jurisdiction law applies if there's a conflict of laws or whatever. So that's one of the things that the contracts address. And then also you make sure that you're operating within the regulations of the away jurisdiction that you're doing business in as well. And you make sure that that's in your contract as well. But most of that's dealt with, like I said, if you're an internet merchant or someone who sells things over the internet, these platforms do a great job of kind of doing all that work for you based on the fact that it's built into the platform themselves, like Amazon or eBay or, things like that. But if you're doing it yourself, that's something that you have to do yourself that you have to have your legal team and your accounting team work on because you're going to be solely responsible for it.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great to be able to tap into some of those platforms. But as you mentioned, if you are doing it yourself, and often most small business owners do have a very unique way, and they've got those isolated transactions. Very important to get that right. We've talked a lot about some of the ways of protecting and making sure that you don't fall foul and having the contracts in place. But I guess what would be great to hear from you, Matthew, is can you share an example of where you've put these contracts in place or the protections in place and it's actually worked really well to protect a small business or give them an advantage?
Sure. I mean, I have a lot of examples. I mean, it's just that I will just say scenarios where we start out or we, retrofit a business where they're in a certain space or they're doing business in a certain sector where they didn't have contracts in place. And then we put the contracts in place and then it facilitates them to be able to do their business. And then when there's an issue, because there's a contract in place, the contract tells you the who, what, when, why, where, and how, if there's an issue, how you resolve it. So the situation gets resolved by having the contract in place. Whereas before, you would just have to kind of make it up as you go and, rely on, whatever the fallback law says or whatever. So that's an ongoing scenario that happens a lot of the time with my clients is that we put the contracts in place, we put the systems in place, and then everything moves smoother. And then things that would have been problems in the past aren't problems because the contracts deal with them. The contracts address how you're supposed to resolve the issues.
Yeah. So that preparation work really pays off because you avoid a lot of pain in the future.
That's correct.
One of the other areas, like we talked about you moving from the large AM Law 200 firms to working for yourself as a small business owner. What are some of the things that you discovered that making that transition you really didn't have that you were so used to depending on in a larger firm?
Well, it's kind of twofold. I didn't have the support system that I had when I, from a business or legal standpoint that I had working for a large law firm, which it's, a law firm is a company. So working for a large company, you have all kinds of different departments. You have all kinds of different fallback systems and all kinds of different things. You have, an IT department. You have, us Americans have to worry about private health insurance. So you have like your benefits person. You have all that stuff's handled for you and taken care of. When you're on your own, starting your own business, you are it. You are everything. So until you figure out who's going to do what, it's you. So that's one of the things that takes getting used to is the fact that, the buck stops with you and you don't have a support system. You are the support system. So you have to be able to come up with plans and be able to delegate and be able to bring in professionals and bring in systems and work with, online programs or apps or whatever to get all that stuff in place for your business.
And so when you started, I'm guessing the first step for you would have been creating your business plan.
Correct. And that's the other thing that I also didn't know about is I knew nothing about business. I represented all these businesses and I kind of understood what they did or whatever, but I don't understand how to represent my own business. So like you pointed out in the intro, I went to 2 different programs because in undergrad, I was a political science major. I didn't do anything with business. In law school, they don't teach you anything about business. So I went into 2 different free programs that we have in Florida, which one was run by the Kauffman Institute, which is the fast track program. And the other is run by Florida State University, which is the Jim Moran Institute, which is for small entrepreneurs. And basically I had to learn what it means to be a small entrepreneur and what it means or an entrepreneur, what it means to have a small business and all the machinations and everything that go into having a business and running a business and being responsible for a business. So it was a great education. I mean, I learned a lot. I've been able to use that education to help my clients over the last 10 years, but that was probably the main thing, other than, the lack of support and everything from the big company, is I knew nothing about business and I had to learn about it. And now that I know about business, I think I do a great job of helping my business clients because I understand the business perspective, not just the legal perspective. Whereas previously when I was with Big Law, all I understood was the legal perspective.
Yeah, because you've gone through that whole process of starting a business to being a mature business. You've learned a lot along the way, and you're very aware of, I guess, the pitfalls and issues facing anybody starting a business. I think anywhere in the world, I think the programs and the university courses that actually help you with your professional skill don't actually teach you much about running a business. I think we sort of leave a lot of that up to learning it on the job, learning to run your business as you're starting the business, which I don't think is a great process. Getting that skills, getting that training in running a business and understanding a business, but also getting advice from the right kind of people who understand your business, getting that mentoring work that Matthew's been involved with as well. I think those things are critical to not just starting a business, but creating a successful business.
No, it's true. I mean, you have to have the background, the education, and you have to get it from somewhere. And like you said, your traditional, unless you're like a business major in college, and even that is more theoretical than practical, you're not going to have a practical business education until you're actually in business.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the other things that Matthew, you have done is you've actually created some really good resources on your website, which is at fornarolegal.com, and we'll share the link to that in the show notes for everybody to access. But you've got a great resource on there, 10 key contracts that every business needs. Obviously, contracts are important. It's a good starting point, but you've written a number of articles or blogs, a lot of resources, white papers to help small business. Great place to get started. And of course, if somebody is wanting to work with Matthew, and I know we've mentioned you're based in Florida, but I know you've got clients globally, including some clients in Australia. A lot of the principles of running a business, a lot of the principles around the contracts, even if the specifics are different, but the principles and the underlying guidelines are the same, whether you're in the US, Australia, UK, Sweden, wherever you are. The guidelines of running a business and the need to have contracts in place is fundamental. So check out the resource that Matthew's prepared. It's a very great tool to be using as a small business. Great way to get started. And I think that the thing that we always say is don't try and do it all yourself. Get the right kind of advice. So reach out and get the right legal help. Don't try and go it alone. Reach out, get the resources, get that support network, which a lot of small business owners don't have when they start out, but get that support network in place. And use the resources that are available. Reach out and get the right kind of advice from people like Matthew Fornaro, who's going to help you with your legal obligations, contracts, and protections, and help you kickstart your business on that way to success. So thank you, Matthew, for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure. You shared some great insights, and also, you took me on a tangent, which I love talking about, but I wasn't quite expecting you to go there first. We've talking about the business plan, how fundamental that is to business success.
It's the foundation for everything, the written business plan. So, but thanks for having me, Paul. I appreciate it.
No problem. It's been great to talk to you today, and I'm sure our listeners have enjoyed it. And look, if you are a small business owner and you know another small business owner that could benefit from hearing this conversation and hearing what we've talked about today, please share the podcast with them. Share it with them wherever they listen to podcasts or available on YouTube at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. So thank you again, Matthew, for your time, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
All right, thank you, Paul.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Business Behind Your Business. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and valuable for your business journey. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with fellow business owners who could benefit, and send in your burning questions because we love hearing from you. Missed any of our previous episodes or looking for additional resources to help grow your business? Head over to our website at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. There you'll find our full archive of past episodes, along with show notes, transcripts, and links to valuable resources mentioned in each episode. Your journey to business success continues at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. Until next time, stay inspired, stay informed, and keep building the business of your dreams.